carbureted or fuel injected? That is the question upon us today. I've got some thoughts on this and I wanted to share them with you. If you would mind, indulge me. This is my 1979 AMC Spirit AMX. You are probably familiar with this car if you spent any time on this channel, or if you know me from the Lucore Automotive channel, you know this vehicle. If you don't, let me give you a quick little introduction. 1979 AMC Spirit AMX, wonderful vehicle. Factory 304 4-speed V8, and it has gone on 3 consecutive power tours. 21, 22, 23. In addition to doing power tours, it's done thousands and thousands of miles of road trip car. I've probably put, I don't know how many miles on this thing because the odometer is not really very functional. We'll call it 15,000 miles. It is old school as it gets. There's nothing fancy, nothing interesting about it, or at least it was. We very recently have decided to convert this car over to fuel injection. It is now currently running the Aces EFI Classic system, which if you're interested in that installation, it's over on the main channel. Look up Lucore Automotive, you'll be able to find it. But the reason we did that is because I think we have finally gotten to the point where it makes sense. EFI has come a long way. Long way. And it is a fantastic unit for when it is set up correctly. But it does need to be set up correctly. Unlike carburetors that can kind of generally make do. If it's not exactly right, it's going to be okay. The EFI systems are considerably more sensitive to having things done correctly. Specifically, vacuum leaks, exhaust leaks, and bad electricity. If you've got one of those problems, or multiple of those problems, and EFI is going to be a massive nightmare for you. Now, this Brawler carburetor that we used, this has been on the car, I don't know, 3 years now, 4 years now. It's a 650 Brawler mechanical secondary, and we have spent a ton of time getting it set up correctly on this car. Even recently, just what we did with getting the carburetor retuned on this car before we pulled it off and went to the EFI, we spent probably 10 or 12 hours fiddling with this carburetor, changing jets, changing pump shots, changing pump cams, changing all sorts of things. And we got it running really well. It made tons of power, well, comparatively. It made great power for what it is, and it ran fantastically. It was great. However, that was 10 hours of labor to be able to get that done. And carburetors are static devices. They are not really designed for a dynamic setup. This is going to be designed, this carburetor is going to be designed to run at whatever our ambient temperature is here, whatever our elevation is here, and generally speaking around that area. If you change it in environments, if you change it into, say, a much higher or lower sea level, it will definitely drastically change what this carburetor can do. You're going to want to go in and make changes. Well, in order to do that, you need to be able to have the know-how to do it, and you need to have the tools to do it. And unfortunately, you may not necessarily have those kinds of things. I know a lot of people are going to push back on the fact that, carburetors are the way of the past and they're the way of the future. Well, I mean, they have a place. They do. They have a time and a place. And I'm not by any means saying everybody should do an EFI conversion. Almost everything I have, classic car, is still carbureted. Okay? So don't get twisted here. I'm still a big fan of the carburetor. But on a car that I actually do a ton of driving on, this is actually an excellent idea. Because when I'm going up through the mountains, I want to have all my power. When I'm coming back down through the valleys, I want to have all my power. As well as that EFI, I'll bet you, is going to get me better fuel economy than that thing did. I get about 19 miles to the gallon in this AMX on road trips, which is excellent. It's got a 286, 287, something like that gear in the rear of it. It does have a posi, and it is a 5-speed now. We did swap it to a Mustang T5, so it does pretty well. It sips fuel pretty well. But the nice thing with the EFI system is it's intelligent, so it's actually a self-tuning unit. What it'll do is it's reading your O2 signal. There's a little sensor in my exhaust on that side that gives you a sniff of the exhaust, and it will tell you what your air to fuel ratio is. And that machine, smart thing, will continually tune itself and make sure that it's optimizing where that is to be able to get the best amount of fuel economy we can possibly get, which is not something that carburetors really can do. Now, you can set up a carburetor very, very well. Old guys, trust me, I get it, I understand. But EFI is a great way to go if you're going to be building something, or if you're going to be doing something that is going to somebody that's maybe not necessarily as much as a wrench as you old heads. Something we see here at Lucore Automotive quite a lot is old school vehicles getting inherited by younger folks that may or may not necessarily have the chops that the older folks had, or they just not even care to learn stuff, may not even care to enjoy it. They don't want to spend hours taking out jets and changing pump shots and springs and all that stuff. They just want to get in their old school car and drive. And that's where the EFI thing really truly shines. Now, I will say, you have got to be very, very particular about your EFI system. Now, I'm not saying particular as far as your brands. There's a bunch of different brands that are out there that build good quality products. We're using one from Aces. This is the Aces Classic system. It's designed for like 400 horsepower. We're also using their Classic, or their Command Center, which I'll get to in a minute. But these systems across the board, regardless of whose name's on the box, who builds the unit, they are very, very susceptible to electrical problems, as well as exhaust leaks and vacuum leaks. If you have any of those issues, it will cause a pretty serious problem with these things. They don't like it. Whereas a carburetor can kind of ham-fist their way through that kind of thing. One of the things that a lot of people are going to say is, yeah, but what about the durability? What about the reliability of EFI? And I'll be honest, that's an excellent point to bring up. It's a truly excellent point to bring up. As somebody who has done a ton of road trips, specifically like power tour in vehicles like this, most of the vehicles you see that are on the side of the road are either overheated, because it's a feature of power tour, or they have an electrical fuel pump or EFI system that's gone bad. That's just the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, those are very, very common issues. And the way we have gotten around that is make sure that your wiring is correct. Make sure that your cooling system is correct. Now, my wiring in this car is not great. It's not great. It's really not great. But it's going to be great because I've got a brand new wiring system that I'm going to be putting in this thing from Haywire and ripping all this old stuff out of here and putting all brand new in it now that I've switched over to this fancy schmancy EFI system. So we're going to make sure that my electrical system is going to be up to snuff, and we don't have any worries about that. We've also made sure that our exhaust system is all perfectly sealed, and it works great. This thing, literally, you turn the key and it fires right up, and life is good. And it takes care of everything. There's no question about how many pumps fuel you give it. If you're on a hill, if you're not on a hill, what's the barometric pressure outside? Did you put it under a tree last night? There's none of those complications. So if you're giving a car to somebody that's not necessarily a gearhead and they want to just be able to get in it and drive it like a modern car, that's where EFI really, really comes in. Now, I'm not saying that you can't do that with a carburetor. You certainly can. You can get carburetors set up fantastically well. But EFI is a tad bit better. Now, I want to go back to this conversation with this center right here, and I think this is a big conversation that a lot of people are not going to understand why we did this. Let me show you again. So this is the command center, okay? Let me get you a decent video here. What this thing does is it is its own self-contained fuel cell and fuel pump. And the reason being, it feeds off the mechanical fuel pump. You can see this line here, this hard line here, comes off the top. Hang on. Comes off the top of my fuel pump here. My mechanical fuel pump drives that feed, which comes into this, and then out through here to the fuel injection system. And this is under high pressure. This is under normal mechanical pressure. The fuel pump inside of this and that tank pressurizes and fires that over to the fuel injection system. That runs on a whole lot more fuel pressure than what you're going to run on a normal carbureted system. And then it's also got a fuel return system that uses our standard fuel return that goes back and feeds the fuel back to the tank that isn't being used in this setup in the front. That does add a little bit of a complication to things because of the way that this is set up. Most people, when they go EFI, they choose to do like a rail-mounted fuel pump. where they'll have an electric fuel pump that's mounted on a frame rail somewhere, or they will drop the tank and put an in-tank electric fuel pump because it needs to be high pressure pushing fuel forward. Well, the problem with those, and we've even done them ourselves, but the problem with those is the fact that if you have an electric fuel pump that goes bad, you're screwed. So you honestly always want to travel with an extra fuel pump with you, whether that's whoever's unit it is. If it's a rail-mounted one, you might be able to swing underneath the side of the car and disconnect your fuel hoses and your wiring and replace the fuel pump and get you back up and running and rock back on the road. If it's a fuel tank unit, that's a whole nother ball game. What does it take to drop your tank? You got to take your tank straps off. You got to drop the thing out. It's a pain in the neck to be able to do that, especially if you're on a road trip. Whereas this, it's all up here in the front. And heaven forbid this thing goes bad or this thing goes bad. Either one of them. The nice thing here is I could take this unit off. I could turn off the power to this thing. I can reroute my fuel hose with this here carburetor, hook up my linkage, and we're back in business. Because I still have my mechanical fuel pump that will feed my old school carburetor. That's why we did that way. And it's a pretty cool unit. Honestly, I'm a big fan of it. As far as reliability wise goes, I'm not worried about anything dying, but I am making sure that I have myself a backup in case something does happen. I cannot tell you how many people that I've seen on Power Tour that will go on Power Tour with a whole other fuel injection system in their glove box or in their go box and all of their tools to be able to replace it if they need it. Nightmare situation, and also not a very inexpensive solution. One of the other nice things, especially with this Aces EFI system, is unlike most all the other units where the brain is actually inside that body, these Aces systems actually put the brain as a separate piece. It's over there on the floor. So when you're driving down the road and it's 120 degrees outside, or you're sitting in traffic and it's 120 degrees ambient temperature and 200 and something underneath the hood, that's bad for electronics. So you put it inside the cabin and you don't necessarily have to worry about the fact that it's going to fry that thing, which, I'll be honest, happens reasonably often. One more thing I want to point out about one of the great benefits of EFI over carburetor. This is my dash for my 1979 AMC Spirit AMX. That does not work. That does not work. That does not work. That does not work. Speedometer works ish, but because I've switched to a 5-speed versus a 4-speed, it's off by quite a bit. With the EFI system, you get this handy dandy little thing, and it has a digital dash. Look at that. So this is going to give me my battery, it's going to give me my temperatures, gives me my AFR, gives me a tachometer, and comes with a GPS unit. So it'll also give me my speedo. No pumps of fuel, no nothing. Just fires up. Now this isn't applicable to my particular situation because this is not a race car. But one of the nice things also with these command centers is there's a boost reference. And if you happen to have one of the more fancy schmancy ones under the hood, you have the ability to actually do boost reference power or fuel pressure. So if you're running boost, turbo, or supercharger, you could actually accommodate for the extra additional fuel necessary by that vacuum hookup. There are all kinds of situations that are out there that if you're going to be using a boost, there's always ways to do that. Or if you're using nitrous, you can change things. One of the neat cool things about that is trying to do that on a carbureted setup with a blow-through carburetor, not fun. Especially if you're trying to do it as a driving road course kind of car or a road driving car versus a race car. Blow-through carburetors, not a great time, okay? Anyway, let me just say, carburetors, I love you. You've done a great job for a really, really long time. And I'm still gonna use you on a lot of my toys. But we have gotten to a point right now where EFI has come a very, very, very long way. And it is a viable option for any hot rod. Or piece of junk like that. This will not be the end of this. I actually have to do a whole bunch of driving around with this car now. Now that we have this thing done and set up and ready to rock and run, I need to put a bunch of miles on this car. Because it has a learning feature in it, when you get it up to temperature, the computer actually goes into a learning mode where it will learn the different throttle positions, the different loads, how much fuel you need to actually be using versus the amount of air that it's gobbling in, the amount of air that's going out the exhaust. And it uses tabulation and smart stuff to be able to figure out the proper amount of fuel for the proper amount of throttle that's going on. And it does all those calculations for you. So instead of replacing jets and doing all that kind of stuff, the computer is figuring all that out. So in order to do that, I just need to get in this thing and go burn some fuel, have a good time. It'll get better as I drive it. It'll make more power, it'll be more efficient, and all I gotta do is drive, which I can certainly do. Anyway, what do you guys think? Have you guys made the leap over into EFI? Are you still 100% old school carbureted? They're never gonna take my carburetor away. I'll be honest, this is my very first one and I'm excited about it. I am gonna run carbureted on almost everything else I own. My race car over here, I don't know. If you haven't seen this, I'm gonna show it to you. My brand new race car I just bought from Junkyard Digs. Well, by brand new, I mean new to me. Pinto race car, but it's a 2.3 Lima four-cylinder Ford. It's got a 2-barrel carburetor on it, and there are 2-barrel options that are out there. So what I could do is replace this carburetor with one of those exact same setups, but the 2-barrel option. And as I drive this thing around, it's going to get better and better and better fuel economy. And when you do things like endurance races, fuel economy is important. So that might be something we'll see in the future. I don't know. Raw power and old school, or do we make it a little bit new school tech? I don't know. You tell me. Anyways, guys, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. As always, welcome to Automotive Ventures with Austin. This is my own little personal side channel of all my stupidity that I work on and own and travel around in. If you're interested in this kind of thing, click on that subscribe button. It's great to have you. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. A lot of this is not going to be real professional. It's going to be more just me having a good time with my own stupid stuff that I buy. And that's the whole point of the channel. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Oh, by the way, I do have a discount code for this thing. If you're interested in anything from Aces EFI, we have one through the main channel. If you go to acesefi.com, you want to buy anything that they have, use code Lucore10. It'll save you 10% off anything you buy. So tell them Austin sent you. And maybe in the comments or something. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Are you still gonna go carbureted? Are you ever gonna make that switch over to EFI? If you are, if you have, what system have you used? What's been your experience? What troubles have you had so far? What things should I look out for? Because I'm new to this, so we'll see. Take care. Bye-bye.